Chicago, this is Bruce DuMont with our Beyond the Beltway analysis of national politics, featuring occasional injections of rumor and innuendo, all offered up by our panel of political insiders, pundits, power brokers, public servants, professors, and most importantly, plain-speaking Americans from coast to coast. Tonight, featuring commentary by Democrat Dean Alatistiotis, Democrat Georgia Logothaides, and Republican Chris Veronis. Our program today coming to you from the Radio Hall of Fame in Chicago in the Paul and Angel Harvey radio studio. Nice to have you with us this evening. We'll take calls and open up our discussion in just a moment, but I want to begin with a brief update on what happened yesterday. In the great state of Nevada, they had their caucus there yesterday, and although they only have about 50% of those voters already tabulated, here is what the networks are reporting as the finals. Bernie Sanders winning handily with 46.6%, Joe Biden in second place at 19.2%, Pete Buttigieg in third place, 15.4%, Elizabeth Warren at 10.3%, and Amy Klobuchar at 4.5%. So those are the way things are standing right now. It clearly indicates that Bernie Sanders is the front runner for the Democratic nomination. We've heard from over a month now from Joe Biden's campaign that South Carolina was going to be his big firewall because of the large African-American vote. He's counting on that significantly, although the African-American vote, although not real large in Nevada, was pretty much split between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. And the other thing about Bernie Sanders, he won no matter how you diced it and sliced the demographics. I mean, he was winning in all demographic groups, including with people who consider themselves conservative Democrats. So he's doing very well. He clearly is the front runner for the Democratic nomination. And our guests that we begin our program with this evening, they all have something in common. Two things. They're all Greek Americans, 100% Greek on both sides. And all of them, two are Democrats, one is a Republican. At this moment, they are all undecided. One person is undecided between Donald Trump and the Democratic field. The other Democrats are decided within the Democratic field. Still, they don't quite know what they want. So let's go to Georgia Logothaides. Georgia, you've been a guest on this program for probably almost 10 years now with Daily Cost. Nice to have you with us. You were single when you joined the show, and now you're a mother of two.
Yes.
With a big smile on your face.
Big smile on my face.
I've always assumed that you were a Bernie Sanders supporter because you're very progressive. Mm-hmm. Okay, where are you now? You're not decided.
Yeah, I'm not decided. I'm not opposed necessarily to Bernie, but I think that the Democratic field has a wide range of options, and depending on what your preference is, there's something for everyone. And for me, I'm a pragmatist at heart, and so I look at Vice President Biden, and I think that he has excellent poll numbers against Trump in these battleground states. I think when you look at the demographics, most people that go to the polls in general election are over the age of 60. He polls extraordinarily well with that group. And so as a pragmatist, and he's a solid Democrat. He's done a lot for the party. I think that, I like that part of the Biden appeal. But at the same time, I'm a policy wonk, and I look at who has proposed the most well-researched plans, who's ready on day one to hit the ground running, and for me, that's Elizabeth Warren. But I haven't chosen between both of them.
Dean Alatistiotis also joins us. Dean, nice to have you with us, making your maiden voyage, also of Greek extraction. Yes. You're also undecided. You're a Democrat, but maybe more moderate than Georgia?
I think for me it's electability and who can be the winner on November 2020. And I'm still undecided for a variety of reasons. I think the Democrats have well-qualified candidates on their side, and I think it ultimately comes to me is who's going to be able to put the best fight going into the fall of 2020 against President Trump.
The other guest this evening is Chris Veronis. I kidded him. He's on the Republican side of the table tonight because for many, many years, you also have been on the program for well over a decade. You're a Republican. You're not a Trump Republican. You don't like the president.
Probably more conservative than a
You're
Republican.
More conservative, but you don't like President Trump. But you're undecided because you may still vote for him.
I might, and I say that as a person who took a pass on the presidency in 2016. I voted for neither Trump nor Hillary. And I think the reason why I'd be inclined to vote for Trump is because, well, first of all, he was an unknown commodity and no one thought he'd ever win in 2016. Easily dismissible. But now we were told that the country would slide off a cliff, nuclear war, take your pick, famine and locust. That didn't happen. And to me, this kind of hysteria is what's influencing me right now. And if I think the election were held tomorrow, it would be on that basis that I would.
One of
cast
the
my
other
vote.
things said in 2016 about Donald Trump was that he didn't like to read, he didn't like to be briefed, he was flippant, he could be rude, crude, and socially unattractive. And some of those things have turned out to be true for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there's been no
Yeah.
change there. But that's less important to you now than, because that was
Well,
one of the other things. You just didn't like him as a person.
It's more than a person. It's he was setting a precedent for politics, for discourse, for policy. I was worried about that because in Trump setting the precedent on the right, what's stopping a Democrat from doing the same, getting in and saying, well, Trump did it? And that's what I was most worried about, that Trump, the Trump shamelessness, no standards, would infect the other side for policy gain. And so that's what I found most detestable about Trump, and to this day still do. And I know we're going to get to this later on about the Russian interference. I mean, that's probably the reason why I'm undecided right now, is because why Donald Trump takes this so lightly,
Now,
foreign interference.
Georgia, back to you. I mean, you travel in circles with people who have some success, financial and otherwise, in life. I mean, don't you have many Greek friends who are saying to you, "Hey, my 401k looks great. Business is great for with me and Donald Trump."
I think the people that voted for Donald Trump initially and are still trying to justify their support for him do point to their 401ks and say, look, I got a bump. But I think for a lot of people that are on the receiving end of Trump's policies, they're looking at it and they're saying, yes, it may not be the apocalypse, but it's a daily nightmare for us. And it depends on what your passion is. For people that care about the rule of law, they look at the lawlessness and they say that this is something that we don't view as being American. For people that care about the economy and the deficit, they look at the $1 trillion deficit and they say, I'm a conservative, I'm a fiscal conservative. This guy has run it at a rate soaring. This is not what true conservatism is about. And then obviously healthcare is a large issue as well. There's people that look at the situation and say, look, I voted for him in 2016, right? But he's in court trying to repeal Obamacare that is saving my life. So I think that you saw a lot of people that voted for Obama that crossed over to Trump, right? And that was a little bit of a phenomenon. And you're seeing now Trump voters that are looking, for example, at Bernie. And you're wondering, how can this happen? And I think that a lot of the pundits that think that there's a type of rationale to the way people view policy, it's not. It's an emotional decision.
But on all those counts, Georgia, all of them, the rule of law, he was impeached. You've got a Congress that's exerting its own autonomy, keeping him in check. Bernie wants to pass like a $12 trillion Medicare for all, and so I guess it's hard to say that he's an anomaly when the Democrats, one, have a check on him, and two, would do far worse if they got into office.
We've got to pause. 1-800-723-8229 from coast to coast and border to border. I'm Bruce DuMont, and we will have a Trump supporter very soon.
A new exhibit from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Stay tuned. Rock on TV. Artifacts from the Jackson 5, Sonny and Cher, Elvis, Cyndi Lauper, ZZ Top, Eric Clapton, and more. Now at the Museum of Broadcast Communications, 360 North State Street, Chicago. From Bandstand to Gaga, let's rock on TV. For info and tickets, visit museum.tv.
Oh, hello. These days, I'm often quoted as saying, you can't believe everything you read on the internet. People forget that I was the first technology president, using the telegraph, T-mails as I like to call them, to communicate with my generals. Well, today, we are fighting a cybersecurity war, and our best defense is for folks to follow some of these tips when they're online. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Hover your cursor over links to determine the true web address. Look for misspellings and poor grammar, which are warning signs of fraud. Be suspicious of emails requesting urgent action, and never give away sensitive personal information. With malware for none, with cyber protection for all. This is your humble servant, Abraham Lincoln.
Back in Chicago, thank you very much for joining us. If you are a Trump fan, we do have a Trump guest on his way. He is a little bit delayed in getting here, so we'll hear from him when he gets here. But I want to go back to or go to a story that also over the last 72 hours has been a big story, and that is the allegation that the Russians are trying to help Donald Trump again. And also an allegation that they're trying to help Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary. Bernie Sanders was briefed on that about a month ago by intelligence officials, and he revealed it to the news media when the story became public, late last week. But the story that was out there was that a mid-range intelligence official had briefed the House committee and the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. And the president became very upset about it because the story that came out was that they were supporting, the Russians were trying to help Donald Trump get reelected. Well, this afternoon, the National Security Advisor was on television today, Mr. O'Brien, and he appeared on a number of the shows. And also in going back and forth, CNN, which led with this story, they've come out with a statement this afternoon, and I want to put that on the record. And this quotes unnamed folks. In fact, Fritz, let's go to the other graphic first if we can. The intelligence, wait, no, let me go back. I'm making a mistake here for those listening to us on radio. But here's what it says. The intelligence doesn't say that. And it goes on to say that a more reasonable interpretation of the intelligence is not that they have a preference, but a step shot of that. It's more than they understand the president is someone they can work with. He's a deal maker. And so that basically is the statement today, because in the course of the television shows today, did you see Mr. O'Brien on any of the shows today? Okay. Mm-hmm. Because he seemed to be saying that the president was upset because he had not been briefed, that the House had been briefed beforehand, including Adam Schiff, and he suggests that Adam Schiff is the one that basically leaked this information, which has been out there for a day and a half now, and that really this mid-range person, she was basically offering an opinion. It was not based on any analysis. So I want to turn to you, Georgia, because you saw the program and I saw the program. I don't know whether others did or not. But did you think that Robert O'Brien today made an intelligent statement about what might have gone wrong here, and that really the news media might have overreacted because of this interpretation of a mid-level member of the national security team?
No, I think he made a political statement, and I think it's unfortunate.
Can a political statement also be a correct statement?
But the statement that you just read, that first let's take a step back and look at the context of who's possibly these unnamed sources. Ever since Donald Trump got impeached, he's done a purge. And so we've seen him purge his national security staff. And the test is, are you loyal to me, Donald Trump? Are you a party loyalist to me? So I think when we look at, who are these people left, these unnamed sources that are feeding stuff to CNN? They're not these career objective officials there anymore. These are people that have passed a loyalty test to Donald Trump. I think, first of all, that's something that we have to consider.
Let me just stop. That, I think, is true maybe within the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
But a lot of Trump supporters would say that what President Trump is doing now, he should have done on day 3. Because in the early days, the administration was a sieve. So it's taken him a long time, and he shouldn't be patted on the back for taking as long as he's taken to get rid of the deadwood within his power, and now he's putting the loyalists in. Dean, you want to comment
So
on
I
that?
think the real question or concern for all Americans should be is that, again, a third party outside of the United States is looking to mess with the election or somehow be partisan and towards one candidate or against the other. And that's a real concern if you're an American citizen.
It's a concern, Dean, but were you surprised at this? Does this surprise anybody at this table? Okay, so
it's not a surprise that Putin wants someone who kowtows to him, I think, and it's no surprise that the old Politburo guys are with a guy whose policies they support. Bernie Sanders, he honeymooned in Moscow, so they agree with him, and so.
So Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump would be a no lose for Russia?
I think what these wily Russians are thinking is that this is a battle of the extremes, and it would be a divisive election, a polarizing election, and that is what they want.
Yeah, I think we're ascribing too much nuance to Putin. I don't think it's necessarily that he supports Donald Trump's policies or he supports Bernie Sanders' policies. At the end of the day, he just wants to wreak havoc. Anything that fractures American society is a win
Yeah, I think
in
that's
the
right.
Putin column.
Would you say that Adam Schiff has given Putin exactly what he wants?
Absolutely not. I think Mitch McConnell gave Putin what he wanted when he was asked by President Obama to make a statement against Russian attacking of our democracy in 2016, and he refused to. I think that did Putin's bidding, but absolutely not.
But when you lead the resistance against the president, is that not falling into the wishes of the Russians?
Why would we as Americans muzzle our dissent against the president? I think that's actually the most anti-American thing that we would do. I think being silent would play into Putin's arms.
Let's look at the reality here, because I think everyone at this table would agree that disinformation, whether it's from Russia or China or North Korea or Iran or whatever, that disinformation, we try to disrupt their alleged elections. I mean, we have meddled, the country has meddled, the United States has meddled. So let's say it's on an even keel. Okay, so we have discovered in 2016 that the Russians did something that many of us thought probably has been going on for a long time. And because in their view, they were successful at it, why would they not do it in 2020? Why would they not do it in 2018?
Yeah.
So, but my question is, as someone that likes to have a robust discussion of debate every Sunday night, how do we know, and how does anyone know, if they're inadvertently feeding something that the Russians would like us to discuss and get upset about? Dean, where do you start with that? How do we know what's real and what's not real, and what we're reading and seeing, and from news media and from the internet?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think part of the Russian desire to continue this havoc or continue the chaos within our political system is exactly what's happening right now. It's the continuation of havoc where we don't know what the truth is. We're always questioning whether you're a D or an R, what's going on, what's going to happen in this election, and the continuation of challenges for the electoral process is what they're accomplishing at best, with the internal fighting between whether you're a D or an R is a real challenge.
Look,
Chris?
the question is not, have the Russians been doing this? I'm sure they have, and in subtle and severe ways. They've been doing it for decades, and like right back to the 1917 revolution to present. The question is, what are we doing about it? Why is there such a tepid response? This, as a conservative Republican, who remembers the Soviet Union, this really pisses me off. It's disturbing. It's disturbing because how are we going to trust these intelligence agencies if we take this pick and choose approach? They're doing their job. They're reporting the facts. And so, I mean, Donald Trump is known to make erratic decisions. He's known to be much more cozy and friendly with kind of autocratic dictators like MBS in Saudi Arabia and bully European allies. I think Putin likes that. I think Putin likes that Donald Trump's isolationist tendencies to pull out of the Middle East, to put pressure on NATO. So you could see Donald Trump's interests support Putin's interests.
A lot of Americans feel the same way. A lot of the Americans feel the same way as Putin does. Then.
Okay. So what happened with the last?
I'm not talking about the assassination of a
just because a
journalist.
segment of Americans support the policy doesn't mean the policy is good for the country.
Or it's the right policy.
I mean, inevitably it leads to war, and if you look at history, that's exactly what's happened.
Bruce, I want to real quick get to two quick points. One, what Russia did in 2016 was more than just kind of the meddling that goes on between countries. I think it's important for your audience to remember that they literally attacked our election infrastructures. Here in Illinois, they accessed the voter registration database, so it's quite possible that they could have gone in and with a push of a button caused millions of people to be turned away from the polls.
They attempted to do that. They were not successful,
exactly.
as far as we know.
Exactly.
I want to say something.
And by the way, here's something
really
just
quick.
to follow up on what you said, Chris. We don't really know, and maybe we don't want to know, our government, our intelligence community, they may be tremendously successful in fighting the Russians in this field, and we don't know about it. We only learn about their mistakes.
I don't accept that. When we took out al-Baghdadi, when we took out bin Laden, the world knew. The PR value of those victories.
How about in cyberspace, though?
Yeah, I think the PR value of us taking it to the Russians, I mean that would be valuable.
But don't you agree that we're not going to have a press conference about that?
No.
I mean, we were allegedly involved in causing some of the failures of the North Korean missiles because we screwed up their technology. We're not going to have a press conference on that.
I want to send a message around the world that we're not going to be pushed around. And we've got capacity, and we can use it against a foreign adversary if they're tampering with.
We've got to pause. 1-800-723-8289. When we come back, we'll talk more. Don't go away.
A line is a powerful thing. It connects the global economy to your living room. Cleaner air to stronger markets. Factory floors to less crowded roads. Today's progress to tomorrow's promise. Norfolk Southern. One line, infinite possibilities.
Meet George Jetson. His boy Elroy.
With instant acceleration, electric cars are more fun to drive and more affordable than ever. Electric cars are here. Plug in to the present.
The economy is not working for everybody, especially those in jobs where unscrupulous businesses keep wages lower by hiring millions of illegal workers. Those businesses could use the government's E-Verify system to prevent illegal hiring, but they refuse. What's best for the country? Let businesses continue to hire illegal workers or require E-Verify, raise wages, and recruit left-behind Americans? See what voters want at everifyworks.com. Paid for by Numbers USA, because numbers count.
Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. We promised that we would have a pro-Trump guest here, and he has arrived. Jeff Hom, nice to have you with us. Very active with the Young Republicans all over the United States. And my question to you, which we were talking about before your arrival, was the allegation that Donald Trump may be getting some support from Russia. The intelligence community issued a kind of a statement this afternoon that maybe the briefing to the House Intelligence Committee was maybe misinterpreted by some Democrats. But how important is it to you that the president try to put to rest that lingering thought that many people have that he somehow is being helped by Russia?
I mean, the reason here that this is lingering is because the press and the left, but I repeat myself, wants it to linger, right? I mean, they have not gotten over 2016 and the fact that they put up a terrible candidate and lost. And so somehow there's always some other reason other than this introspection, right? And Russia tries to interfere in basically every election, right? There's similar reports out saying that they're trying to help Bernie, right? And they're just trying to sow chaos, right? Russia is. That's also giving them more credit than they deserve. The idea that the Russians can somehow influence American elections is kind of overblown. They're not that sophisticated.
But how, before the break, we were talking about the civil discourse that we try to have on this program and talk radio in general and really even cable television. I mean, it's built on conflict between one side and the other, and one side yells at the other side. We've had examples of that on this program for many, many years. But again, that's part of the robust discussion of politics. But I guess in some respect, I mean, you're trying to sow discontent and get people to vote for a Democrat. You're trying to sow discontent and get people to vote for a Republican. I mean, how does that differ from just basic political life in any country in the world?
It's very different because it's misleading and manipulative. And I completely disagree that Russia isn't sophisticated enough to impact our elections. The digital campaign that they're running, and think about it, when the election comes down to perhaps 10,000 undecided voters in one specific part of Wisconsin, and Russia is dedicating hundreds of trolls and millions of dollars to try and deceive them about the candidates' positions or even about where they can go to vote. That was part of Russia's disinformation campaign in 2016, leading people to the wrong precinct. They are absolutely sophisticated enough. And the president's own appointees in the intelligence community, the director of the FBI, the director of the CIA, all of these intelligence officials have testified before Congress under oath for the past year that Russia is doing this, and that it is an alarm for us to wake up and do something about it before it's too late.
You know, it's interesting that there's this clarion call about Russian interference in election, but no blame placed on the Obama administration, under which this entire operation apparently happened, right? So, I mean, do you believe that any votes were changed by the Russians, not through persuasion, but like actual through interference?
Like technical interference?
Yeah.
I don't think so. There's been no evidence of it, but we have a president who refuses to even broach the topic of election security. And in fact, it was incumbent upon congressional Democrats trying to push through an election security bill against his protestations. If he can't even recognize the threat to our democracy, how can he possibly fix it?
So do you believe? Wait. So all right, you want to talk about integrity of the vote? Absolutely, I'm 100% there with you. So you believe that we should require identification to vote?
I don't believe that we should require identification to vote because it's shown to suppress votes, and there should be voter verified paper ballots. That is how we protect the integrity of our elections.
Why does it suppress votes?
Because every single study that has been done on voter ID, and it's been implemented in many states, so we have hard data to look at, shows that it actually suppresses the right to vote, because there's people that are in their 70s or 80s or college kids who don't even have a student ID.
Why not?
And because they don't have a student ID, because we live in this bubble, as in a privileged bubble, and we don't understand that there are people who don't have driver's licenses, don't have student IDs, work minimum wage jobs. They don't have any form of government ID.
Did they get on a plane? Did they get on a plane? Did they get on a train?
Most people in America don't even travel by plane. They can't afford it.
So
and then when they go to the DMV to get one of those required IDs, they can't even afford the $40 fee. We are living in a bubble, and we don't understand the real world impact of these policies. And it's a solution that isn't even trying to affect a real problem. There has been no voter fraud in America that has impacted an election. There's been none whatsoever.
Jeff, I don't know whether I would acknowledge that, but Jeff, go ahead.
I would disagree wholeheartedly with the idea that there's never been voter fraud that has influenced an election. I mean, we just completely whipsawed there, right? We need to. The vote is sacrosanct. We need to protect it, but showing an ID is not something we're allowed to do.
If you're so for securing our elections, then why aren't you calling out President Trump for his refusal to fund the election security bill? There are 3
I've been here for 10 minutes, so we haven't gotten to that yet.
Election security bills sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk that he has refused to send to the president because the president doesn't want to sign them.
All right. I would agree that based on all of the investigations of 2016, no one has said that votes were changed. Republicans, no one has said that votes were changed.
Completely no evidence.
There's no evidence of that. Everybody agrees with that. So what I'd like to concentrate, go back to my discussion here. If the one thing that we know about is disinformation in this world in which we live, where everyone's got a phone in their hand, let's deal with what we can do about disinformation. Let me ask you, Dean. Go back. How do you go about determining when you get a text or a tweet? How do you know that the information that's coming to you is legit or not?
Oftentimes you don't, but it's imperative on the individual to do the research and click more than just the text message that you get or the website that pops up on your news feed. You have to do the work in order to figure out whether what you're being presented on is truth or lies.
And don't you acknowledge that a lot of Americans are lazy?
I wouldn't say they were lazy, but I think there's other things that are happening in their daily life that is not limited to, let me go and do the additional research on what this thing that I'm being presented on with.
Gullible. Are they gullible? Chris?
What I was going to say is I was going to speak to the division here. One of the worst moments for Donald Trump, objectively, doesn't matter what party you belong to, was when he stood next to Vladimir Putin in Norway and looked like a lapdog. It was disgusting, appalling. Everyone said it across the board. And I don't understand why Donald Trump, just to let some steam out, especially if he's so concerned about winning an election on his own accord, if he would call out Donald Trump, knock it off. You don't do this to the United States. I mean, if someone tries to burn your house down and they're unsuccessful, you don't say, well, it didn't work. I'm okay. No, you're going to go after them. And I think that should be our posture.
I would agree. And if you look at what Trump has actually done against the Russians from a policy perspective,
you're right.
It gives lie to this whole idea that he's somehow a lapdog.
But it's a mixed bag.
It's
a mixed bag with NATO.
But it really make a difference if you came out publicly and challenged him. And Obama said cut it out.
Absolutely.
Bernie Sanders said don't. I mean, they both have said it. I mean,
Obama said it, but he took a pass on doing anything during the election.
Yeah,
that was a deliberate decision on the Obama administration's part.
So President Obama was caught on a hot mic talking to Dmitry Medvedev about this is my only reelection. After reelection, I will have more. What did he say? Flexibility, right? And Medvedev says, "I'll transmit that to Vladimir." There is nothing similar to that.
It's a complete non sequitur, but okay. I'd like to get back to the topic.
I think it's.
You don't think his unguarded comments are?
What does that have to do with President Trump being a lapdog to Putin at that press conference and undermining NATO, the security alliance that has created world peace?
Press conference.
Absolutely.
Right. So the NATO alliance is stronger than it's ever been.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not because we have Donald Trump consistently undermining it.
This is Trump derangement syndrome.
It's absolutely not, and that's very disrespectful. It's not. It comes from a policy position, and as somebody who is an expert in foreign policy, I can tell you that he absolutely undermines the NATO alliance when he says that NATO shouldn't essentially exist, that it's all corporate bureaucrats that are trying to take over the world. When he completely undermines the mission of NATO, which is specifically was set up as a deterrent to Russia and to secure the integrity of Western Europe.
Keep the Russians out, the French in, and the Germans down, right? Or the British and the Germans down.
I think that this is just a classic example of how Trump has poised just what used to be basic norms in this country.
I think this is actually an example of how anything with Trump has created this completely caustic reaction, and then Trump is blamed for that reaction.
I want to go back to a specific. There's a lot of Americans who like the idea that Donald Trump has stood up to the NATO allies and asked them to pay their fair share. Americans want everyone to pay their fair share, okay? So
one of
again,
Bernie's
can you speak to the NATO alliance that has not paid its share?
Well, so the NATO alliance targets, and this is a great example of what Donald Trump does best, which is take credit for other people's successes. So
Okay.
those NATO alliance targets were already in existence before Donald Trump made his big ask and press conference.
Yes, we know that.
So they were already meeting towards those targets. So it's not as a
Towards.
result of Donald Trump that
Towards.
all of a sudden these
Towards the
allies
targets.
started paying more.
is
It's
there-
simply
Why
not
is
whether
it? Why is it that if that is true, why is it that the Obama administration or anyone any of the defense of the Obama administration never made the point when Obama left office that they had forced the NATO alliances to make
didn't
good?
make a press conference out of it because it was written in the agreements and it wasn't something that they thought they had
Why
to trumpet
did
for their
why
base.
did let me ask you this, because why didn't the national news media ever do a story about how all the NATO allies have paid up their past dues, and it only became a story when the president of the United States said to Angela Merkel and all these other leaders, "Hey, pay up. We want you to do your share."
Well, the
that's a very positive thing. I think Republicans and Democrats like when the
Absolutely.
president tries to get a better deal. Back shortly from Chicago.
When CSX moves forward, so do the rest of us.
Dallas, St. Louis, Nashville, Tuscaloosa. All major cities to feel the destruction caused by a direct hit from a tornado. Is Chicago next? It's not a question of if, but when, and the clock is ticking. Learn what to do now at ready.illinois.gov to become tornado ready.
Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. Georgia Logothaides, we are commenting about the disinformation that's out there and how voters are supposed to react to that, what's real and what's not real. You have focused on something that Michael Bloomberg has done, which you think is disinformation. Go ahead.
Yeah, we've spoken a lot about Russian disinformation, but the campaigns have been doing it too, and they've been either selectively editing video or manipulating video in a way that really, unless it's flagged by social media companies, you think that it's real. And Mike Bloomberg, who had a poor performance in the last debate, put out a clip that made it seem like he had an amazing performance. So he essentially had a statement in the debate and then had crickets and dead silence in the video for an extended amount of time, making his other opponents look foolish. And if you were one of the people, most people didn't see the debate. If you were one of those people that didn't see the debate and you only saw this paid advertisement in your feed, you would think that Mike Bloomberg did fantastic in the debate. So I think part of the discussion about
But
how
that's
to,
all advertising.
well,
How are you going to separate that from
that's
basic
a great
advertising?
question. And so Facebook and Twitter have been working for a very long time on combating disinformation on their platforms, not just in the sphere of politics, but in the sphere of health, in the sphere of just generally news. And one of the issues is that the quality of the information that is pushed out to people in their feeds and pushed out in algorithms. And they're working on some type of verification system or labeling system so that people understand the difference between what's real and what isn't.
Jeff.
So, you know, again, going back to the whole 2016 Russia fever dream thing, right? It's not that the Democrats could have possibly done something wrong. It's that the American populace was duped. Do you think anybody in the world, anybody in the country believes that there were crickets in the debate?
Well, it wasn't literal crickets.
No,
it
there
was
were literal
silence.
crickets. No, I watched the ad. There were crickets playing. Do you think anybody believes that there were crickets in the debate. That's insane.
But you're saying
right?
take
and
that
so,
down.
And so
Whether
it's
there's crickets or not, there's an undertone there.
there absolutely is an undertone, and I would invite
ad.
you.
Right.
I would invite you to
an
look
ad.
at the 2012 ad that has a Paul Ryan stand-in throwing an old lady off a cliff.
Well, of course,
right?
that's
that's
not
not
believable.
disinformation,
But there
right?
was
You
a
know?
video that circulated on social media of Nancy Pelosi where they slowed down her words to make her appear drunk, and that video got millions of views of people who legitimately thought that she was drunk, and it
Like
wasn't.
Jimmy Kimmel does with
eventually it
Donald
was
Trump
taken down.
once a week.
But
yeah.
it wasn't labeled as parody. When
is
you
sauce
watch
for the
Jimmy
goose.
Kimmel, when you watch the late night hosts, you know that they're doing a bit. But when this is pushed out on ostensibly serious news platforms like Breitbart, like other ones, and they're pushing it out as being true, it's deceptive to the American public.
But in the instance of the Bloomberg ad that you referenced, Bloomberg said, "I'm the only one up here that started a business. Anybody else?" And he looked over. The answer to everyone else did exactly as they did in that spot. They showed they may have elongated the pause, but nobody. The message was, you know what? I've formed a business. You know what? Nobody down here has ever formed a business. And isn't that an important thing for Bloomberg? And shouldn't the American people know that?
It was
Joe
more-
Biden's been on the public trot since he was 30 years
It
old.
was more about the content of his words. It was how he made a caricature out of the other ones, and he snipped different sides and
The biggest
exasperations
question
Baby,
here-
from
it's
different
politics.
debates.
Go ahead.
But you know what? It's
Chris,
not.
no, Chris
Michael
Veronis.
Bloomberg has got bigger things to worry about than backlash for this ad.
Yes.
Like these
does.
NDAs, for example, and and that's something that they really weren't prepared about. They knew the attacks were coming. They could have done something. They could have released them like they are right now. They made the decision
He looked
after the
completely
fact.
caught off guard.
Yeah,
and it was awful.
they knew it was coming. They knew the attacks were coming. They were all sharpening their knives. And so
What
in
does that
terms
say about
of
his ability to be president, if he didn't take the debate seriously?
it says a lot. I mean, we got a true look at the guy, kind of like the Wizard of Oz. You know, we've got these huge ad buys.
It was
across
also
the
a
board,
diminutive figure.
right? And then all of a sudden, we see that this guy is like a zombie candidate. Doesn't really like people, and just what he said too about like the women. That they didn't like jokes. You heard the crowd. I mean, they like groaned at that. And so anyway, I mean, he's got big problems. And I'm someone who believes that, you know, he could just be buying poll numbers and not votes. I mean, Rudy Giuliani had the same strategy, and he face planted. So it's a big gamble, and it's all premised on Biden collapsing.
Dean, wasn't he a possible favorite of yours, though? Bloomberg?
No,
or he's
no.
never on the radar.
He was
for
never
you?
on the radar. But I think the real
Was
challenge.
Elizabeth Warren?
No, she was not.
Why
but
not?
Just I just don't. I think she has great policies and a lot of plans. As she says, I have a plan for that, but just not somebody that I would think would be able to lead this country starting day one.
Are you surprised that Elizabeth Warren didn't get more of a bump from her kneecapping of Michael Bloomberg at the debate? Because
No.
she was as good with Michael Bloomberg as Amy Klobuchar had been in previous debates, I think.
Yeah, I mean, debates, though, they always just kind of give a temporary bump and then things settle back into normal. So I wasn't surprised. I mean, it's hard to get traction out of a debate if you don't have billions like Mike Bloomberg to immediately put it into like ads on TV.
Who's the first one to drop out, or the next one to drop out? Anybody want to offer?
I mean,
a guess?
I don't really think that Steyer is actually in this race, so I'm gonna put him aside. But I think it's, you know, if Biden doesn't finish first in South Carolina, he's out. Like out, not like.
Does he know that he's out?
He could become a zombie candidate.
Yeah.
He could go into Super Tuesday and past Super Tuesday.
And it's honestly the same thing that happened in 2016 on the Republican side, is that everybody's
Well,
fighting
see,
about second place,
and
and
that's-
then Bernie just kind of coasts into
and
it.
I'm glad you brought that up
Absolutely, man.
because you know what we've got is a divided or like a crowded field,
Everybody's fighting for second.
a divided base, an unconventional candidate who's maybe a little extreme. Where have you heard that before? 2016.
Yep.
Welcome to the club, guys. You guys are going through
We
it
went
right
through
now.
this.
Just getting started.
Yes.
And remember, he was the candidate everybody wanted because everybody thought he could be easily defeated. And I think there's a lot of people out there that think Bernie Sanders would be easy pickings, and I think they are dead wrong.
I agree with you.
I'm Bruce DuMont, back shortly with another full hour. Don't go away.
Welcome to the world, 2116. You can fly across town in minutes, or across the globe in under an hour. Whole communities are living on Mars, and solar satellites provide Earth with unlimited clean power. In less than a century, Boeing took the world from seaplanes to space planes, across the universe and beyond. And if you thought that was amazing, you just wait.
Today, fresh fruits and vegetables will go from a field in California to a grocer in Miami. A bottle of beer from Eagle Pass will journey to a restaurant in Manhattan. A 2x4 in Oregon will find its way to a townhome in Denver. A hybrid will say goodbye to Detroit and hello to a showroom in Austin. While a steel beam will leave a mill in Illinois for a high-rise in Phoenix. And a flat screen in China will head to an electronics store in Memphis. Because today, as every day, wherever you find business, you'll find us.